Wait. All three of them were together with no guards. Well, what were they doing out there? Wow. April 11th, 1941. Anybody who's been watching this series has known that someday soon it was going to come. Well, it is here. This week comes the invasions of both Yugoslavia and Greece. I'm Indy Neidell, and this is a double-length episode of World War II. Oh yes. Last week, a coup in Iraq brought the anti-British Rashid Ali to power, and Britain immediately began sending troops to secure its oil interests there. Adolf Hitler explained to his officers that his planned summer invasion of the USSR must be waged with unprecedented, unmerciful, and unrelenting hardness. Commonwealth forces captured Asmara and advanced on Addis Ababa in East Africa, and in North Africa, Erwin Rommel's unexpected Axis offensive has quickly driven into Cyrenaica, taking Benghazi and throwing the Allied defenses there into confusion. That confusion is only going to get way worse this week. Rommel's men take Derna and begin fighting near Mechili, which falls the 8th. By the 6th, though, most of Cyrenaica is under Axis control. But that's not what I mean about the confusion getting worse. Okay, on the night of the 6th, German scouting units run into a British staff car on a desert track north of Mechili. The car's driver is killed when shots are exchanged, and the Germans order the occupants of the car to surrender. Out from the car step Generals Philip Neame and Richard O'Connor, the leaders of all of the Allied troops in the region, and John Combe, whose Combe Force shut the door on the retreating Italians 2 months ago. Yep, seriously. First, the British forces were stripped bare in the area to send men to Greece. Then, Rommel's sudden offensive has thrown the ones left into chaos as it is, and now the Germans have captured the Allied leaders. It's crazy. Side note here, Archie Wavell, in overall command of the whole theater, offers any 6 captured Italian generals back for O'Connor's return. This is not accepted, and I don't know what he offered for the others, or if he offered anything for the others. By the 10th, the Germans have surrounded Tobruk, while other units have forged ahead to take Sollum and Fort Capuzzo. The siege of Tobruk begins. The Australians there, with British artillery support, number some 24,000. The Axis may be advancing in North Africa, but it's the Allies who are in East Africa. The Awash is their last great obstacle before reaching Addis Ababa. Now, it's a river running through a deep gorge with steep sides. But though the Italians blew the bridges, and though they have machine gun outposts on their side of the gorge, the attackers managed to ford the river at 2 points, and by the 5th, have advanced to Addis Ababa. The head of the Italian police is waiting to surrender the town to the King's African Rifles. But since the long Allied journey here began 53 days ago, it has been a joint effort from many different units from Africa, India, and beyond. So Alan Cunningham, in charge in East Africa, wants to have as representative a force as possible occupying the capital. So the surrender ceremony of Addis Ababa is postponed until the next day, April 6th. It takes place in the home of the Duke of Aosta. The Duke himself has withdrawn to the peak of Amba Alagi, along with Luigi Frusci, his field commander. What remains of the Italian forces have withdrawn to Desi, Gimo, or Amba Alagi. 500,000 gallons of gasoline, nearly 2 million liters, and 300,000 of diesel are taken at Addis Ababa, as well as a vast array of medical supplies. Elsewhere in the region, Allied troops advance on Massawa. Now, there are 7 Italian destroyers there. The destroyers were ordered out to sea on desperate missions, which the Italians love to design and sometimes fulfill. You know, there has been a few great quotes from that source, Sparty. I wish I knew who specifically wrote them, because that's great. I mean, we've had like 5 of them that are really poetic and stuff. It's a great book. It is. It's a great book. He missed his calling. Anyhow, of those destroyers, the Royal Navy sinks one outside Massawa, 4 are sent to attack the fuel tanks at Port Sudan, and 2 to attack Suez. But they either run aground or are taken out by the Fleet Air Arm. Since the phone line from Asmara to Massawa still works, the British phone Admiral Bonetti in Massawa and tell him that if he sabotages the port or the merchant ships that harbor there, the British will not be responsible for the feeding of the 40,000 civilians there who import pretty much everything. Bonetti asks Rome what to do. They say, smash up the port. The Indian Infantry, the Free French, the French Foreign Legion, and the Highland Light Infantry all managed to break into the town before the destruction can get too far. Massawa falls the 8th. 17 large Axis merchant ships are taken. The British 4th Indian Division then makes ready to head to Egypt to help defend against Rommel. The priority in East Africa now is to clear the road between Asmara and Addis Ababa. On the 11th, the United States declares the Red Sea no longer a combat zone and once again open for American shipping. They can again carry supplies to the British in Egypt. There is plenty of goodwill between the US and Britain, but other nations are at least offering goodwill. On the 5th in Moscow, Joseph Stalin meets with Yugoslavian minister Milan Gavrilović and tells him that if Yugoslavia is attacked, the USSR will adopt an attitude of goodwill based on friendly relations. Gavrilović then asks, and if the Germans, displeased, turn against you? Stalin says, let them come. Well, we will sure see about that, because at 5 in the morning of April 6, 1941, the Germans begin the bombing of Belgrade, the Yugoslavian capital. The Battle of Yugoslavia has begun. Swiftly and with savage brutality, Yugoslavia was struck and overrun. In the bombing of Belgrade, the principal purpose of which was to create confusion through terror, 17,000 civilians were killed, the largest number of civilian deaths by bombing in a single day in 20 months of war. You see, a great many Yugoslavians have come to Belgrade from other towns and villages to celebrate the holiday, for the attack comes on Palm Sunday. I also have to point out that other sources give numbers that are many thousands of fewer people killed in the bombing. It may have been as few as 4,000. Well, 150 dive bombers and bombers with a heavy fighter escort fly in relays. The initial raid is 3 waves, lasting for 20 minutes each at 15-minute intervals. Any and all defenses are destroyed by the first wave, so the dive bombers can go down all the way to rooftop level. Other than the 17,000 or however many dead Yugoslavians, all communications between Yugoslavian High Command and the armies in the field are virtually destroyed. All of Yugoslavia's airfields are simultaneously attacked, and most of their 600 planes are destroyed on the ground. As Axis forces begin to cross the borders into Yugoslavia, one army in Bulgaria makes for Salonika in Greece, because Operation Marita, the Battle of Greece, also begins this day. The Luftwaffe bombs the port of Piraeus before the dawn, and 6 Allied ships are sunk, but then the Clan Fraser blows up at anchor with 200 tons of TNT aboard and devastates the harbor. 10 other ships sink. Just before 6 that morning, but still 2 hours after the explosion, the German ambassador, Prince Victor zu Schönberg, gives Greek Prime Minister Alexandros Kourou a long list of grievances, the main one being that Greece has joined with Britain. The ambassador says that Britain plans to use Greece as a base of operations against the Axis. For this reason, the government of the Reich has already given orders for its forces to drive out British forces from Greek soil. Any resistance which the German army encounters will be mercilessly crushed. It goes on to explain that the Germans do not come as enemies, but are providing a service both to Greece and to the European community. The Italians, who want a little revenge on Greece for being, well, better than them in the Italian invasion of Greece, prepare to invade again. They also plan to march into Yugoslavia from Istria in the north and the Italian enclave of Zara on the Dalmatian coast. The Hungarians are also ready to move in. Yugoslavia has under 30 divisions versus over 50 Axis ones, and the latter are armored and have total air superiority. Units of Wilhelm List's German 12th Army invade Greece from Bulgaria. Ewald von Kleist's 1st Panzer Group and Maximilian von Weich's 2nd Army will attack Yugoslavia within days. The Yugoslavian defense plan is to pretty evenly distribute units all along the borders, but this means there will be no strong reserves. They do plan one offensive thrust by the 3rd Army to drive the Italians out of Albania. The United States Army has this to say in a 1953 pamphlet about the invasion. The Yugoslav army could have escaped total annihilation only if it had cooperated in conjunction with the Greek and British forces and had built up a line of resistance in the extreme southern part of the country to achieve this purpose. This would have meant the voluntary abandonment of almost the entire national territory, a decision which no Yugoslav political leader could possibly have envisaged. That army, fully mobilized, is slightly under 1 million men, but as the invasion begins, it is still being mobilized. A lot of the men are still getting clothed and equipped in their garrisons, so troop deployment is a real mess. As for the Greek forces, most Greek troops had been evacuated from western Thrace when the Germans entered Bulgaria, and it is now defended by the Evros Brigade, which is 3 border guard battalions. In eastern Macedonia is the Nestos Brigade, and the Metaxas line is held by the 7th and 14th Divisions east of the Strymon River and the 18th west of it. South of Lake Doiran, the 19th Motorized Infantry Division is in reserve. The Greek forces defending the Bulgarian border are around 70,000 men total and are under command of the Greek Second Army with headquarters in Salonika. In central Macedonia, the Greeks have the 12th and 20th Infantry Divisions. The Greek First Army, with its 14 divisions, is in Albania, since Greece has been at war with the Italians since October and has advanced into Italian-occupied Albania. Now, Greece is supported by British and Commonwealth forces. The 1st Tank Brigade of the 2nd British Armoured Division is in the lower Vardar Valley near Salonika, the New Zealand Division north of Mount Olympus, and the Australian Division blocking the Aliakmon Valley. The German attack plan is based on the idea that because of the Greek forces stuck in Albania, the Greeks will not have enough men to defend their Bulgarian and Yugoslavian borders, so they will drive armored wedges through the weakest links in the defense chain. A thrust towards Skopje to cut rail and road communications between Yugoslavia and Greece, and then an attack on the flanks of the better defended Metaxas line. That thrust by the 40th Panzer Corps begins at 5:30 a.m. April 6th, and though they meet spirited resistance, they enter Skopje the evening of the 7th. They then turn their attention to the Vardar positions. The main attack in Greece on the 6th, though, falls on the Metaxas line in both Macedonia and Thrace. The German 30th Corps attacks the line in the center and the east. The 18th Mountain Corps attacks the line to the west, but also sends forces into Yugoslavia towards Strumica. On the 7th, armored units moving south after taking Strumica put heavy pressure on the west flank of the Metaxas line. Meanwhile, von Kleist's 1st Panzer Group crosses the Yugoslavian border the 8th and reaches Niš. The Metaxas line collapses the 9th after 3 days of stubborn Greek defense. Credit where credit is due. The German 6th Mountain Division breaks through, crossing snow-covered 7,000-foot mountains to take points the Greeks believed unconquerable. Also, credit where credit is due, some of the Greek defenses on the line hold out for days after the Germans have bypassed them. Fort Rupel, for example, is toward the west end of the Metaxas line dominating the Strymon Valley, right in the line of advance from Yugoslavia. This is one serious fortress and is under bombardment on the 6th before Prime Minister Korizis is even awakened. Stukas dive bomb it for 2 days until the Germans realize this is just a waste of ammunition, and the Greeks fight off attack after attack after attack. By the 9th, the fort is basically isolated. Salonika falls to the 2nd Panzer Division. General Konstantinos Bakopoulos, in charge of the line, surrenders his troops. However, the Germans release the Greek soldiers after disarming them. Hitler regarded the Greek soldiers as the valorous descendants of Alexander's hoplites and the Theban sacred band, a unique mitigation of his disdain for non-Teutons, and he so admired the bravery they had shown in their war with Mussolini that he instructed OKW before the campaign began to release from captivity all Greeks taken prisoner as soon as an armistice should be signed. Major Georgios Doratzos, in charge at Fort Rupel, when informed by the Germans under a white flag of the ceasefire and the occupation of Salonika, refuses to surrender the fort the 9th, but does so the morning of the 10th. German units have by now taken Monastir and are heading south for the Monastir Gap. Also on the 9th, Maximilian von Weich's German Second Army crosses into Yugoslavia from Austria and takes Maribor. The German 46th Panzer Corps attacks from Hungary, taking crossings of the Drava River. The German Second Army takes Zagreb the 10th. They are helped by the fact that many Croatian soldiers desert the Yugoslavian army. This is not a sudden decision or anything. On March 31st, German Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop wrote to the Consulate General at Zagreb, "Please inform the Croatian leaders confidentially that we would provide for an independent Croatia within the framework of the new order for Europe should the Yugoslav state collapse through its own mistakes. They could promote this goal most effectively by completely abstaining from further cooperation with Belgrade." So that day, Yugoslavia is split up. An independent state of Croatia will be established under Ante Pavelic and the Ustasha, the ultra-nationalist Croatian organization. Also that day, the German 40th Panzer Corps begins advancing south through the Monastir Gap. Their first contact with the British is north of Vevey the 10th. SS troops take it the 11th, but are stopped south of the town by the Australians, who hold the heights overlooking the road through the pass. And as the week ends, there are attacks everywhere. Far to the north, General Ambrosio's Italian Second Army starts an advance towards Ljubljana, though Weich's Germans get there first. Italian units are advancing along the Dalmatian coast. The 41st Panzer Corps attacks from Romania towards Belgrade. The Hungarian Third Army attacks towards Novi Sad. There are attacks everywhere. There are even attacks on Germany. On the 9th, as reprisal for the bombing of Belgrade, the British bomb Berlin with incendiary bombs. Adolf Hitler spends part of the night in his bomb shelter. But they're not the only ones attacking Germans. On the 10th comes the first open hostile act by the United States towards Germany of the war. The destroyer Niblack drops depth charges against a U-boat that sank a Dutch freighter. The Niblack picks up 3 boatloads of survivors, drives off the sub with the depth charges. Also on the 9th, the United States occupies Greenland. With approval from a free Denmark, they will build both naval and air bases there for fighting the U-boats. American President Franklin Roosevelt tells British Prime Minister Winston Churchill that America will extend security and patrol areas east to the 25th meridian. And on the 11th, they begin sea patrols in the North Atlantic, though they are still neutral. And a very active week of the war comes to an end, with the British basically losing their leadership all at once in North Africa, but triumphing in East Africa, and of course not one, but 2 nations invaded by the Axis powers in southeastern Europe. It's interesting what Stalin said on the 5th. Yeah, of course, we can't know just what's in his mind, but we have seen him repeatedly warned that the Germans are planning to attack his country. Maybe it's sinking in after the attacks this week, because on the 10th, a decree from Moscow creates a special logistics department for the Red Air Force, setting up airbase areas and ground services. Fighter corps are also specifically formed to beef up the air defense of Moscow and Leningrad. The Soviet Union seems to be awakening to the danger it is in. Stalin seems to be singing a different tune. If you'd like to see our Between Two Wars episode about the rise of the Ustasha, you can click right here for that. This week's TimeGhost Army Member of the Week is Aaron Powell. You can join the Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. It is your support that finances all of our programming, so do not forget to subscribe and ring that bell. See you next time.